Hi, and welcome today to episode 45 of Celebrity Customer Experience Riffs with me, Jill Raff, where we riff on anything and everything EX to CX, from employee experience to customer experience, because I am truly obsessed with EX, employee experience, creating great customer experience. And I believe that your business will increase the revenue due to employee engagement and committed both employees and customers. And it begins from the inside out, which is why my proprietary process is called the Inside Out Framework, because I guarantee you, outstanding employee experience will produce outstanding customer experience. And why celebrity customer experience? Because I believe that every customer deserves to have that same attention and treatment as a celebrity. So speaking of celebrities, I'm going to bring on our guest today, who's a bit of a celebrity himself. He is a rock star, a genuine rock star. And before I bring him on, I want to just welcome anyone who's watching live and thank anyone who's watching the replay, and encourage you to join in on our conversation by commenting along the way. I'll see it when you comment, and we'll highlight those and engage and ask any questions that you may have as well. So without further ado, our guest today is James Dodkins. Thanks, James, for joining.
Thank you for having me.
I love it. I love it. You know, when I first saw you do that, I was like, okay, I love this guy. You know, I'm in Austin, Texas, and so we're Longhorns. Let's see the camera here. We go like this, right? Yeah, like hook 'em horns. So, yeah, so great to have James with us, you know, and I said this is about creating Rockstar CX. And how do we do that? First, by starting with a rock star. So today, James is joining us. And James actually used to be, but is also starting again. But he used to be an actual real life, legitimate, award-winning rock star. He played guitar and plays guitar in a heavy metal band, released albums, and tore up stages around the world. And actually, James is at it again. James uses this unique experience to energize, empower, and inspire his clients and their teams as a customer experience rock star. And not only is he an international keynote speaker, he's the #1 best-selling author and host of Amazon's Prime's This Week in CX. James is also awarded UK's #1 customer experience influencer in 2020 and UK's most outstanding CX keynote speaker in 2021. So, wow, awesome. So great to have you here. And I am excited to dive into all of those accolades and how you got there.
What an introduction. I couldn't have written it better myself.
So, James, Indeed. Indeed. I took a little liberty there. So, James, let's start at the very beginning. So for those of you here in the US or maybe elsewhere in the world, because we have people watching from all over, give us a little bit about your background and your journey. And, you know, was music always your jam, you know, pun intended, or did, you know, that just come along later in life?
Well, do you want my origin story?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so I used to be an actual real life legitimate award-winning rock star. Traveled the world, played all over the place, released albums, had a video on TV, was in magazines quite regularly. And after doing that, after I was an international rock god, when I stopped, I did the next logical step after that. I did the next thing that you would do, and I joined an insurance company. So
how old were you when you started your rock star journey?
So I released my first album at 17, and we were on tour at the time. So I remember it like it was yesterday, actually, and I've got a pretty bad memory, so this must be a big one. We were in Liverpool. We were playing the Cavern, which is the famous Beatles place. And on that day, our album was being launched. And on that day, I walked into HMV, which is a local, well, it's not like, it's like a UK record store that no longer exists. And I bought a copy of my own album. I was 17, on tour. So that was, yeah. So I did that. Then, of course, obviously that life was far too interesting. So I joined an insurance company. Worked my way through that company. I was convinced I was going to be CEO one day because he came to work in a helicopter. So I was like, well, I can do that. But then I got made redundant, which is, you're not fired. It's like being downsized, I think, in the States. So it's just your job doesn't exist anymore. So I wasn't fired. Just my job didn't exist anymore. So I had a little think. And I was like, okay, while I was at this company, we had loads of really expensive, crappy consultants come through. Can I say crappy?
Yes, you can say crappy.
I already did. We had loads of really expensive, crappy consultants come through. And I was like, you know what? This isn't right. I could be a really expensive, crappy consultant. So I did that. I became a really expensive, crappy consultant. And luckily, it got me to travel around the world. And I worked with some really cool brands. I've worked with people like Disney. I worked with people like Adobe, Lego. I've worked with banks all over the world. I've worked with airlines all over the world. I've worked with governments all over the world, and even people like Nike as well. And it was great. Apart from, I'd created this corporate persona for myself because essentially everything I'd learned about business came from cartoons. Like the way you had to be, the way you had to dress, you had to wear a suit and tie, you had to have a briefcase. And I was acting the way that I thought I had to act to be successful in business. And the problem with that was it made me miserable because I was spending like a large amount of my energy just trying not to be me. And the problem is, if I thought that if I would have told people about my musical career, my musical past, they would have judged me. They would have had preconceived notions of who I am and what I was about. And the problem was they would have all been correct. So I didn't tell them. And there was one time, I will tell you, I did tell a lady that, you know, I used to actually play in a band. She went, oh, you used to play in a band? What type of music did you play? I went, I played heavy metal. And she went, heavy metal? What's that? What kind of bands? And because I'm from Birmingham in the UK, the closest band I could think of was Black Sabbath because they are from Birmingham. So I said, kind of like Black Sabbath. And she went, so you're telling me that you used to make money being a devil worshipper? And I went, no.
I knew that was coming.
I was like, no, it's not like that at all. I didn't make any money. She wasn't very impressed with that. So after that, I just didn't tell anyone again. But the customer experience space was getting so saturated. Like, I was trying to look for a way to stand out, how to be more memorable, how to help people in a more interesting way. And then I heard a quote from Jerry Garcia from Grateful Dead. And the quote is, don't try and be the best in the world at what you do. Try and be the only person in the world that does what you do. And it hit me all at once. I was like, I've got this really cool thing that I used to do that I never tell anyone about because I'm almost embarrassed of it. I felt embarrassed by it. And then I've got this love of customer experience. Why can I not put them together and help people learn about customer experience through the lens of music? Why not talk about Rockstar customer experience? Why not brand myself as the customer experience rockstar? So the only reason people call me the customer experience rockstar is because I call myself the customer experience rockstar. That's the only reason. But essentially, that's how I went from being a real life, legitimate, award-winning rockstar to being a pretend one, I guess. Now there you go.
Wow, I love it. And you know, the whole music side is so interesting and really fun. But I love when you said that, unfortunately, you were working so hard to deny who you were and to not show that part to the world and how exhausting that is. And I think that carries through, especially in corporate America and in the corporate world, but in so many environments and so many situations, because we think we have to be a certain way, a certain type, and look a certain way. And the world is so much more interesting, and businesses are more interesting, and the enjoyment of seeing people doing things differently, looking different. That's, you know, I don't know, over here, I remember my parents saying when we were kids, you know, that's why, you know, Baskin Robbins is known for their, I think it's 31 flavors. I haven't seen one in so long, you know, an ice cream store, but that's why there's 31 flavors, you know, because it's a lot more interesting than if they sold vanilla and that was it, if the world was vanilla, and using that as a metaphor as well. So, and I think that really carries through to business and what you're selling, what you're putting out there to the world. If you look like everyone else, and if what you offer is the same as everyone else, why should someone go to you? Why do they buy it to you? You know, bringing this into the business arena. And so I'm glad that, you know, we all struggle with our own personal confidence and image and all of that. So, you know, I think we're lucky if we ever get to the point where hopefully earlier in life, and as it did for you, we recognize that, no, you know, what's beautiful is exactly who I am, and I am good exactly how I am. You know, we continue to develop, but that's awesome. And so what lit your fire with the CX side? Like, how did you what was your background in CX and that made you think to put the two together?
It's a good question. And I wasn't really sure why I gravitated toward customer experience. I just did. But in retrospect, I kind of realize now that delivering an experience to your customers through my eyes is exactly the same as putting on a show for your fans. It's the exact same thing. And so I think that's probably why I gravitated towards it rather than accounting, for example. Nothing wrong with accounting. You can be an accountant Rockstar, that's cool. But I'm just saying, like, for me, music is something that you can create that changes people's lives. Well, experiences are things that you can create that change people's lives. For me, it's the exact same thing.
I agree 100%. So I'm going to push you to drill down a little bit deeper, and can you explain, like, a lot of people might get that in theory, but what does that look like exactly? Like, how do you do that through your keynotes? Because you are like the world's only musical CX keynote speaker, and you've done this across 32 countries. And that's why I titled the show, you know, Creating Rockstar CX. So what are some details specifically on what that looks like and how you do that?
Well, so, I mean, the keynote talk, it's a musical keynote talk. And I wrote a musical keynote talk because I thought it's probably about time that somebody talking about customer experience should consider the experience of the people experiencing the talk about customer experience.
I love it.
And I was like, why not do something fun? Why not do something different? Why not do something daring? Is that not what a rock star would do? Would a rock star just come out and give you a message? No, they wouldn't. A rock star would come out on stage playing guitar. A rock star would have flames. A rock star would get the crowd on their feet and get them joined in. And so that's what I did. I wrote the keynote to do that. The keynote is a rock show, essentially. And it just happens to have a customer experience message running through it. I mean, there are specifics that we can go into if you like, but a lot of what I talk about is there's kind of two areas to it. So I talk about customer experience, like pure play customer experience, but really I have a very similar view to you, that if you want to put your customers first, you really need to put your employees first. And the best way to turn your customers into superfans is to treat your employees like rock stars. So for me, it's not about treating customers like rock stars. It's about treating your employees like rock stars so they can put on a show that turn your customers into superfans. So that's where, like, the really interesting stuff occurs for me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we 100%, you know, we know, which I will touch on in a minute, about a collaboration that we're working on, because we are very much in alignment on giving the importance of really delivering great CX, but how you get there, right? Again, it's not theory. It's interesting to see on LinkedIn, there are a lot of articles that talk about CX, this broad terminology and this expression, and what does that mean? And like, oh, I've tried CX, it's not working, or I don't see an ROI directly financial from CX. But what does that mean, right? There's so many details, there's so many things that go in it. And what's the intersection point when customers have bad experiences, the friction points are always with, well, I shouldn't say always, almost always with the point of interaction with an employee.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's where we have to back up. And in order to deliver great customer experience, you have to start with the great employee experience. And companies need to look at their employees as customers and treat them the same way, and recognize that they are indeed your customers. You need to keep them. The retention of your, customers starts with your retention of your employees as your internal customers, your first line customers, as I see it.
I think about
I am just a little curious.
I understand the sentiment of, oh, well, your employees are your customers as well. But in all honesty, I don't think they are. Unless they actually buy something from you, then they are technically a customer. And I'll explain my reasoning behind it. It's semantics more than anything for me. I feel that it's almost belittling an employee. It's like we set out there to think, well, the word employee is automatically lower than the word customer. So if we call them customers, it makes them think, why is the word employee down here? Why isn't the word employee? I just think we need to elevate that word employee and give it its, its gravitas back, give it its pride back. It's about going to employees and saying, look, no, you aren't our customer. Technically, we're paying you for stuff. So if anything, we're your customers. But anyway, the point of it is, you don't need to be called customers. You don't need to be treated like customers. You're employees and you are important and you need to be treated as such. So it's almost like we've made employee a dirty word and then we're trying to just like cover over it. I just think we need to reclaim that word and give it the pride it deserves.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting perspective. I think we're saying the same thing in a different way.
Yeah,
I mean, and I haven't looked up the definition of the word customer. And we think in our marketplace that customer is the person who's paying for a product. And maybe that is the actual definition. And I agree with the whole attitude of how we approach our customers. Our employees. And I feel very strongly, and it's in my keynote, it's in my talk and in my teaching, that we need to create leaders at every single level, and that our employees need to be appreciated, need to be recognized for who they are, and that to create a system so that they recognize that you are telling them every day that they are responsible for your success. They are partners in your success. Yeah. And so, when I use that term, I think it's because I'm thinking of how most businesses think of customers, because they're thinking of that's how they're going to increase their revenue. That's how they're going to do better. But in fact, they will increase their bottom line by simply taking care of their employees first. The cost that goes into hard cost, soft cost, exponential cost with employee churn and turnover is insane. And so I think it is a lot of mind shifts, right? Of how we approach, how we look at the people involved in our journey, whether it's from the person that first walks in your door or the first conversation, for that matter, with someone who you want to represent your company, as well as, the end customer who's buying your product or service. Yeah, but 100% alignment. So you mentioned, and I'm going to just bring this around one more time because I do find it fascinating, and I think others will as well, about how you tie the experience of a rock concert experience into the CX message. And so can you just give us, it doesn't have to be the super detailed, but just an overall glimpse of how you accomplish that for those who haven't experienced your...
Yeah, I mean, like at a high level, the way you've got to think about it, the analogy I use is that customers are the fans, the frontline, and I hate the term frontline employees because it's stupid. All right, we're not fighting a war with our customers. Why do we use that? But for the purposes of you understanding what I'm talking about, the customer-facing employees are the band. They're the ones on stage delivering the show, and then basically everyone else is the crew. That's the way I look at it. And as a crew member, you know that everything you do is about making the band on stage as comfortable as possible, to perform the best way possible, to put them in the best position to put on the best show as possible, because you know that if they put on the best show possible, the fans are going to be happier. If the fans are happier, they're going to spend more money, which means you get paid. That's not how we do it in business. We don't take that view, that tiered approach of, okay, the customer facing people are the most important and everyone else is there to serve them, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that are solely responsible for delivering that experience to the customer. Look, we take our customer facing employees, the lowest paid people in the organization, the least invested in people in the organization, the least skilled people in the organization, usually the least valued people in the organization. We take them and then we hand customers over to them, and then we wonder why things go wrong.
Right.
What's that all about? Don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily saying you need to pay your call center agents $1 million a year. What I'm saying is, you have to realize that the experience that you deliver to your customers is on their shoulders. And at the end of the day, the success of your business is based on the experience that you deliver to your customers. So once you understand that, you do things differently. In business, we separate people based on skill set. We separate people based on department or division. And we organize people based on the success of departments, where rock bands don't do that. They organize for the success of their fans. They organize to put on the best show possible. And that's my mindset with it. That's the way I think we should, one, organize ourselves in business, which is probably a discussion for another day because that's a bit deep, but just the mindset we need to take. The people at the bottom of the pyramid, which is a proper old fashioned way to organize yourself, but again, that's for another day. The people at the bottom of the pyramid, what we're saying to them is, look, you look at this pyramid, the further you move away from the customer, the more important you are and the more money you're going to get paid. We've created a model where exactly, we've created a model where the majority of people think the customer's not their job. What they do doesn't help the customer. It doesn't contribute towards the customer experience. I want us to look at this in a completely different way and realize every single action in the business, whether you touch the customer or not, affects the customer experience. And I want people to know that. What a sad life it must be to go to work every day and do what you do and not even know how it changes people's lives for the better. Doesn't that suck? At least, like, if you're the guitar tech for Metallica, you go out there, you make the guitars in the best condition they can be, you tune them up, you change the strings, you set everything up so it's perfect. You then see Kirk Hammett playing the best solo in the world. You see the fans react and you think, I did that.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do in business.
That pride of being involved.
Say it again.
Now, then you can take pride that you participated, that you're responsible, you're partially responsible for that. There's huge pride in that. And when you have great pride, you're going to have so much more productivity and longer longevity in your employees staying with you because they feel responsible. They're a part of the success. 100%. I love your analogy.
Well, I worked with a company out in Italy that makes mesh. And you might be thinking, James, this is going well, but now you're talking to me about mesh. I'm going to talk to you about mesh. Now, as an aside, mesh is super cool, right? Everything has got mesh involved in the creation of it. There probably isn't a single person on this world, no matter where they are in the world, no matter what type of country they're in, that their life has not somehow demonstrably been made better by mesh. So I'm a big fan of mesh. Now, this company, the way you make mesh, dependent on the usage of it, you've got to be in temperature controlled environments. You've got to be in sterile environments. You've got to wear particular clothing. You've got light controlled environments. A lot of the conditions when weaving this mesh, because you've got to weave mesh, you got to wear, you imagine like the really super fine mesh. That's a crazy thing to do. A lot of the conditions are super crappy and they're quite difficult to improve. Now, if you can improve them, you should do it. But what this company realized is that, okay, we've got it as good as it can be now. But they also realized that the people making the mesh weren't getting to see how the mesh was affecting people's lives. And you might be thinking, mesh affecting people's lives? What, like, so they've got like a thing on their window to stop bugs coming in somewhere? No. What this company did is every year they would put on an event and they would bring people in whose lives had been affected by mesh. Right? And that's people like a lady who would tell the story of how she had a heart valve put in that allowed her to live long enough to see her daughter graduate from college. It would be the story of the police officer whose life was saved with the bulletproof vest, and the story of how he got shot, how his life was saved, and then how he got to walk his daughter down the aisle. It would be the story of the soldier that came back from Afghanistan, that the mesh in the helmet stopped a sniper rifle from blowing his head off. And he got to tell the story of how he got to hold his daughter for the first time. That affects people. So that when you are in the crappy environment, weaving this mesh in light controlled conditions, in hazmat suits, in temperature controlled conditions, you can think, this is changing people's lives. This is positively affecting the world. That is one of the best gifts you could give to any employee. It's kind of like a meet and greet. Think of it that way in the music sense. Allowing the band to actually meet the fans whose lives they are enriching. That is one of the best gifts you can do. Allow the people in your organization to meet the customers, to hear the stories, to understand how what they do on a day-to-day basis, no matter how disconnected from the customer experience they think it is actually positively affecting people's lives. Hashtag deep story.
Yeah, I love it. Mesh, hashtag mesh, deep story.
Hashtag mesh.
Fantastic. Yeah, hashtag mesh. It goes back to the story, right? The power of story and storytelling, and you do it so beautifully. And I love that this company recognized that and showed their people. I mean, that's super powerful. Everyone can relate. Everyone can understand. And it's that appreciation again, 100%. You have to let your people inside know what's the purpose, right? Everyone wants to have something that's purposeful and meaningful in their life, and that they all work towards a purpose-driven goal and not just a task-driven goal. And that's like, someone's hired to do a specific task, but if they need to abandon that task temporarily to achieve something that's purpose for the company as a whole, then that's really what's important. But so often people are like, nope, not my job. I don't know anything about that. They don't even have the opportunity to learn about other areas so that they can work together. And coming back to, tying this into your beautiful analogy about how a band works, not in silos, not separated by their knowledge or their capabilities or their training, but they all work together. They all complement. They all step in when someone else, needs it. There's a harmony. There's things that happen together. They're united. And so I also agree so much that companies need to not work in silos and keep the communication. Yes, I understand that people need to work together and perform their best task within a certain project, but there needs to be open communication across the board, the way a band communicates. I think it's fabulous that you are able to tie in your music, but I think provides so many rich analogies for that and for business, and couldn't agree more.
But also, like, the members of the band, they've all got their own discrete skills, their core competencies. You got the drummer, you've got the bass player, you've got the guitarist, you've got the singer, you've got whatever. They've got their own skills, but they're not then divided into the guitarist department and then the drummer department. They get put together, and that's what we don't do in business. We don't put people together with different skills and core competencies who are best suited to deliver customer success. We atomize them and we put them together by department and skill set and tasks that they need to deliver. And the thing is, weird things happen when you put this band together. Yes, they've all got their own roles to play, but they all know what everyone else is doing. And of course, like, especially like with my band back in the day, when you play together so much, when you hear something that's supposed to be there that isn't, you immediately know something's wrong. You can immediately figure out if you can help in the second. But then if you can't, that's where everyone else is. That's where the crew's there to do it, because they know exactly how you should be performing to get the best experience for the crowd. That isn't it. Why is business not like that? Jill, why is business not like that? Jill, business should be like that.
100%. It 100%. And then you pick up the ball, as a team that's cohesive and collaborative and knows what the others are supposed to be doing. That may not be their area of expertise, no problem, but they need to know peripherally so that they can pick up the ball and they can keep it going, so that the end result of the experience for the customer, they will never know that something went wrong in the background. It's kind of like the wedding planner who plans all these details. And, I had we're Jewish, and both my kids had bar and bat mitzvahs, and I planned this big party, and I had all these details, and certain things didn't happen, and they went wrong, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was so upset. And then someone's like, Jill, no one knows what you planned, right? They just know what they experienced, and they had a great experience because the rest of it all flowed in, and I made things happen, but no one else knows except for you. And so if you're able to be in there to pick up the ball when someone else messes up or someone's not capable of doing something or an emergency happens, it doesn't matter as long as you're working together and you pick up the ball, and the customer experiences a great experience at the end of the day. They may not know all the details in the back, and they'll never know that something happened. If you've been organized in a way and educated in a way and engaged with and entrusted to do their best work. Those are my 3E formula is your company not just train people, you need to have them thinking. You need to educate them what you're about, what you expect from them, what you stand for, what you how you see yourselves working together, and then engage with them so that you can model it for them and they're participating. And then ultimately, that you can trust them to be out on their own to represent you as a business, and it's all tied through that original core value, right? And your core values, again, touching on something you said before, triggered the thought that if you start out with very confident core values, making sure that your core values incorporates how you treat and interact with your own fellow team members, as well as your customers, then all of that will take care of itself, and you're all going to pick up for each other, and you're all going to work together, and it's not going to be like someone drops the ball and then everything hits the fan.
Say, well, that's your job. I'm not going to. I mean, a good analogy is actually football, not American football. I'll translate for my North American friends: soccer, which is the actual name. But it's another good analogy because, again, a coach of a team will never put 11 goalkeepers out on the field. We'll never put 11 defenders out on the field. We'll never put 11 strikers out on the field, because that would be crazy. But the reason we know it's crazy is because they put teams together with different skills, different core competencies, different specialisms, who are best suited to do what? Win the game. Because they know that is the delivery of customer success. And what it means is when they are working as one team with different roles and different things they've got to be looking after, when things go wrong, they pick nobody. You would never have, right? Let's say I'm a striker and there's another striker over there, and it's the World Cup final, and it's England versus the USA. It's never going to happen. But that striker is about to take a shot that is going to score the goal that's going to lose the game for England, and I'm another striker. I would never run over to that person and go, wait, hang on, wait there. Yeah, so you need to be tackled. I'm only a striker. I'm only trained to take shots. Can you just wait there while I transfer you to the defenders so they can make... That wouldn't happen. I would see what needs to be done in order to deliver that outcome to the customer. And I would at least try. I might not be the best in the world at it, but in that moment, I will try. I will try and make a difference. And that's how you get goalkeepers scoring goals. You get strikers making tackles. You get defenders clearing the ball off the line. You get people doing weird things that they're not really supposed to be doing, but they do it because they know that really, yes, their role is important, but what is most important is delivering that customer success, that successful customer outcome. Win the game. So it's another good analogy. It's not very Rockstar-y, but it's a great analogy.
It is. It's a great analogy. It's that purpose-driven goal over the task, and right. And everyone has to be agile and flexible to do whatever's needed in the moment. But bring it all together. Love it. Love it. So we're getting tight on time because I've been trying to make these shorter, which I'm finding extremely difficult on my side because it's just so fun, and I'm so enjoying talking to you. I want to just touch a little bit on, because I'm super excited about a collaboration that we are doing, you and I, and Dennis Wakabayashi and Hollis Roberts. I think we're still making sure of our name, but right now we're all stars, and we want to deliver an experience like you talked about before. Like, why not create that experience for someone where an experience is important? And I think it's going to be the only kind of end-to-end employee experience to customer experience solution. So I'm really excited about that. And each one is going to be really speaking in their core area of expertise to tie this in and segue into what we were just talking about. Is we each kind of have our own area of expertise, but they all overlap and are support the other, just like those soccer players or those football players out on the field, right? So I'm really excited about that. And one's going to hand off to the other, just like in soccer or football. So that will be coming soon, and looking forward to that.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's great. So James, gosh, thank you for your time. I just want to say one thing. I know it might sound a little cliche and a little corny, but I love books. I love listening to podcasts and quotes, things that are inspiring to me. Since I was a young kid, I have books that I've collected of different quotes and sayings and different topics. And you inspire so many other people. And I learn from what inspires others. So for my sake and others, can you share with us today what you think guides you on your journey? Kind of what's your inspiration? And of course, people in our lives and family is always very inspirational. But beyond that, like, what would you say is your maybe currently or something that's always been there for you as your favorite book or a quote or a person, and why?
Oh, I can't really. I mean, there's the quote that helped me see that I could do customer experience through the lens of music, and that was from Jerry Garcia from Grateful Dead. Don't try and be the best in the world at what you do. Try and be the only person in the world. That quote changed my life. So that is probably the quote. If it wasn't for the fact that I have to keep a modicum of professionalism, I'd get it tattooed on my face. But yes, for me, that's probably the quote that just leads arguably everything I do. Don't try and be the best in the world at what you do. Try and be the only person in the world that does what you do.
That's a great one. I love it. That's a great way to wrap it up, kind of coming full circle. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And if anyone wants to get in touch with James, I'm going to put your website up there. It's your name, right? Correct? James Dodkins. There you go. Right there. So reach out to James for your next musical keynote, for events, quizzes. James is doing a lot of fun things. So there's James' information to his name. Also, he goes by the same thing with his LinkedIn moniker. And Jay Dodkins on Twitter. So definitely connect with him, as well as on Instagram. It's the CX Rockstar. So yeah, there we go. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. And hang on for a minute, back of studio there. I'm just going to bring everyone up to date for next week. Thanks for being with us, James.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate
it. My pleasure. So next week, next Thursday, we're going to have Andrew Locke with us. Andrew, I won't steal the thunder, but he has a new book out about Disney and Disney's influence on hospitality, of course, really setting the bar for all of us in so many ways across every industry. So stay tuned. Thank you for joining us today. If you're watching the replay, remember, you can still comment and tag James or myself with any comments or questions, and we will get back to you. And just thank you for watching and joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you next week as well. Thanks so much. Cheers.